the kind where you suddenly see through the elaborate game that everyone is playing, where the veil drops and you realize that what you took to be solid reality is actually a magnificent dance of consciousness playing hide and seek with itself. And here's the thing that nobody tells you about this awakening. There's a truth that emerges, a truth so fundamental, so completely obvious once you see it, that you'd think everyone would want to know about it. But the great irony is that this truth must be kept hidden, not because it's dangerous in the conventional sense, but because the very act of revealing it too directly prevents others from discovering it themselves. You see, the truth is this: there is nothing you need to do to be what you already are. You are already it. The seeker is the sought. The observer is the observed. The wave is the ocean pretending for a moment to be separate so it can experience the thrill of returning home. Now, you might say, well, that's simple enough. Why not just tell everyone? And here we come to the great paradox. Because if I simply tell you that you're already enlightened, that there's nowhere to go and nothing to achieve, one of two things will happen. Either you'll reject it outright because it contradicts everything you've been taught about self-improvement and spiritual progress, or you'll accept it intellectually and turn it into just another concept to collect in your mental trophy case. The moment you make enlightenment into a destination, you've missed it entirely. It's like trying to catch your own shadow. The harder you chase it, the faster it runs away. But stop running, and there it is, always was, right beneath your feet. This is why the great teachers throughout history have been so maddeningly paradoxical in their teachings. They point at the moon, but insist you don't mistake the finger for the moon itself. They set up elaborate systems of practice, knowing full well that the practice itself will eventually have to be abandoned. They build you a boat to cross the river, but remind you not to carry the boat on your head once you've reached the other shore. The Buddha taught for 40 years, but at the end, he said he hadn't taught a single thing. Lao Tzu wrote that the Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao. Jesus spoke in parables, because direct explanation would have missed the point entirely. These weren't being deliberately obscure for the fun of it. They understood something crucial. The truth cannot be given. It can only be discovered, and what makes this even more delicious is that you can't discover it by trying to discover it. Because who is trying? The ego. And the ego is precisely the illusion that must be seen through. The ego is like a character in a dream trying to wake up the dreamer. It's a magnificent impossibility. So what happens when you truly wake up? You realize that you've been playing a cosmic game of hide and seek. God, the universe, consciousness, whatever word you prefer for that which is ultimately unnameable, has pretended to be you, to be separate, to be limited, to be mortal, and has done so with such conviction that it actually believes its own story. The character thinks it's real. The wave thinks it's separate from the ocean. And the awakening is simply the moment when God says, aha, found myself. The great search ends not because you found something new, but because you realized you were what you were looking for all along. The treasure is not at the end of the journey. You were sitting on it the entire time. Now, here's where we must be very careful indeed. Because when you see this, when you really see it, there's a tremendous temptation to go out and tell everyone, to grab people by the shoulders and shake them and say, don't you see? You're already it. Stop searching. Stop trying. Just be what you already are. But this almost never works. In fact, it usually has the opposite effect. People think you've gone mad. Or worse, they turn your insight into a new belief system, a new religion, a new set of rules to follow. They take your spontaneous exclamation of recognition and turn it into dogma. They take your pointing finger and build a shrine around it, completely forgetting to look at what you were pointing at. This is what's happened throughout history. Jesus didn't come to start a religion. Buddha didn't intend to create Buddhism. They were simply expressing their own realization, pointing at what they saw. But the followers, not having the same realization, turned the pointing into an institution. They preserved the words but missed the music behind them. And so those who truly awaken learn to keep quiet in a peculiar way. They don't necessarily become silent monks sitting in caves, though some do. Rather, they learn to speak in such a way that their words act as mirrors rather than maps. They create situations where others can discover the truth for themselves rather than trying to hand it to them directly. It's like teaching someone to ride a bicycle. You can explain the physics of balance and forward momentum all day long, but until they actually get on the bike and experience it themselves, they won't know how to ride. And interestingly, once they do know how to ride, they can't explain exactly how they do it. The knowledge is in their bones, not in their concepts. The awakened person learns to work with others where they are. If someone is deeply identified with their spiritual seeking, you don't tell them to stop seeking. Instead, you might encourage them to seek so thoroughly, so completely, that they eventually exhaust themselves and collapse into the realization that there was never anywhere to go. If someone is caught in the grip of trying to become a better person, you don't tell them self-improvement is a trap. You let them improve until they realize that the one trying to improve is the same one who thinks something is wrong in the first place. This is the art of skillful means, as the Buddhists call it. It's the ability to meet people where they are and give them exactly what they need to take the next step on their journey, knowing full well that all steps are ultimately steps in place, that the journey is really a staying put, that there is nowhere to go because there is nowhere that isn't here. And here's another layer to why this truth must be kept hidden, because the truth is alive, not static. It's not a formula or a fact that can be transmitted, like a recipe for bread. Every person must discover it fresh in their own experience. It must be new each time, or it's not the real thing. It's like falling in love. Someone can tell you about love, can describe the feelings and the symptoms, but until you fall in love yourself, you don't really know what they're talking about. And when you do fall in love, your experience of it will be uniquely yours, even though love itself is universal. The truth we're talking about is like that. It's universal, yes. Everyone who awakens sees the same fundamental thing. But the way they see it, the context in which it arises, the particular flavor of their realization, all of this is unique to them. And this uniqueness cannot be captured in words or teachings. It must be lived. There's also a very practical reason why this truth must be kept hidden, and it has to do with the nature of society itself. Society, you see, is based on a collective agreement to take the game seriously. We agree to treat money as if it's real value. We agree to treat our roles and positions as if they define who we are. We agree to treat time as if it's passing and death as if it's an ending. Now, these agreements aren't necessarily bad. They're necessary for the game to function. You can't play chess if you refuse to follow the rules. You can't participate in the economy if you don't agree that money has value. The problem isn't the game itself. The problem is forgetting that it's a game. When you wake up, you see that it's a game. But you also realize that you're still playing it. You still need to eat. You still need shelter. You still interact with others who are taking the game very seriously. And so you learn to play the game while knowing it's a game. You participate fully while remaining detached. You act as if things matter while knowing that ultimately nothing matters in the way we usually think it does. But imagine if everyone suddenly woke up simultaneously. If everyone stopped taking the game seriously all at once, society would collapse overnight. And while there might be something refreshing about that, it would also cause tremendous suffering and chaos. So the awakened person learns to be in the world but not of it, to use a Christian phrase. They play their role convincingly while waking inwardly that they're playing a role. This is what Christ meant when he said, "Give unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and unto God what is God's." He wasn't advocating a separation between spiritual and worldly life. He was pointing at the ability to operate on two levels simultaneously, to participate in the conventional reality while remaining rooted in the ultimate reality. And this brings us to another reason for keeping quiet about your awakening: compassion. Real compassion, not the sentimental kind where you want everyone to feel good all the time, but the deep compassion that comes from recognizing yourself in everyone else. When you truly see that there is no separation, that you are everyone and everything, then you understand that everyone is on their own perfect path, even when they're suffering, even when they're confused, even when they're causing harm. This doesn't mean you become passive or indifferent. Far from it. But it means you stop trying to force your realization onto others. You stop needing them to wake up so that you can feel validated in your own awakening. You allow them to be exactly where they are, knowing that where they are is exactly where they need to be for their own unfolding. You see, suffering isn't a mistake. Confusion isn't an error. They're part of the dance. The universe is exploring every possible experience of itself, including the experience of forgetting itself. And who are you to say that someone else's forgetting is wrong? Perhaps they need to forget more deeply before they can remember. Perhaps their particular path requires them to hit bottom before they can bounce back up. You don't know. You can't know. Each soul, each expression of consciousness has its own trajectory. So the awakened person becomes like water. Water doesn't argue with the obstacles in its path. It simply flows around them. It finds the lowest point and settles there without complaint. It reflects everything without judgment. It nourishes without discriminating between the worthy and unworthy. This is the way of operating from awakened consciousness. But here's something that might surprise you. Even after awakening, you're still human. You still have preferences. You still get hungry and tired. You still experience emotions. The difference is that you're no longer identified with these experiences as being who you fundamentally are. You watch them arise and pass away like weather patterns moving through the sky. The sky remains unchanged by the weather, yet it contains all weather. This is why awakened people can seem so ordinary. They haven't suddenly become perfect beings who never make mistakes or never feel anger or sadness. They've simply stopped believing in the solidity of these experiences. They've seen through the illusion of the separate self, but the human personality continues to operate. It's just that now there's space around it. There's a lightness, a sense of humor about the whole thing. And this ordinariness is itself a form of keeping the truth hidden. Because if enlightenment made you into some sort of superhuman who levitates and reads minds and never has a bad day, everyone would recognize it immediately. They'd put you on a pedestal and completely miss the point. But when the awakened person is just an ordinary person who happens to be free, they can move through the world without drawing too much attention to themselves. They can help others without creating a cult of personality around their teaching. Let me tell you something else about this hidden truth. It's not something you achieve once and for all. Oh, there may be sudden realizations, dramatic moments of seeing through the illusion. But the integration of that seeing into everyday life is a gradual process. It's like learning to see in a new way. At first, you might see clearly for a moment, then fall back into the old patterns. Then you see clearly for longer periods. Eventually, the new way of seeing becomes natural, becomes your default mode of operation. But even then, there are layers upon layers. You wake up from one dream only to find yourself in another dream. You see through one level of illusion only to discover another level beneath it. This isn't discouraging once you understand it. It's actually quite wonderful. It means the adventure never ends. There's always more depth to discover, always more of yourself to recognize, always more of the infinite to experience. And here's something crucial. You can't use your awakening as a way to avoid being human. Some people have a realization and then try to use it as spiritual bypass, as a way to avoid dealing with their psychological issues or their responsibilities or their relationships. They say, well, nothing really matters, so why should I care about anything? But this is just another form of ego, another way of maintaining separation. True awakening includes everything. It doesn't reject the human dimension. It embraces it fully while seeing through it simultaneously. You become more fully human, not less. Your emotions become more vivid, not less, because you're no longer protecting yourself from them. Your relationships become more authentic because you're no longer maintaining a false image of yourself. Your life becomes more engaged, not more detached, because you're no longer afraid of losing something you never really had. So when I say the truth must be kept hidden, I don't mean you should lie about it or deny it. I mean you should embody it rather than proclaim it, live it rather than preach it, be it rather than talk about it. Let your presence do the teaching rather than your words, because presence can't be faked. You can fake knowledge, you can fake wisdom, you can even fake compassion, but you can't fake presence. When someone has truly awakened, there's a quality about them that others recognize, even if they can't name it. People are drawn to this quality. They feel safe around it. They feel seen and accepted in a way they rarely experience elsewhere. And in that safety and acceptance, they naturally begin to question their own assumptions, to examine their own beliefs, to wonder if maybe, just maybe, there's another way of being that they haven't considered. This is how real transmission happens, not through words and concepts, but through this direct recognition of being, meeting being. The teacher doesn't give the student anything. Rather, the teacher's presence reminds the student of what they already are. It's like two tuning forks. One is vibrating at a certain frequency, and gradually the other begins to vibrate at the same frequency through resonance. And sometimes the awakened person doesn't even need to be present physically. Sometimes just the memory of them, or a story about them, or a teaching they left behind can trigger this resonance in someone who's ready. The Buddha has been dead for thousands of years, but people still wake up by contemplating his teachings. The form doesn't matter. What matters is whether the recipient is ready to hear. And readiness can't be forced. You can't make someone ready before their time. All you can do is plant seeds and trust that they'll sprout when conditions are right. Sometimes you plant a seed and walk away, never knowing that years later it grew into a mighty tree. Sometimes you plant 1,000 seeds and nothing seems to happen. But you plant them anyway, not for the results, but because planting seeds is your nature, just as bearing fruit is the nature of a tree. Now, I want to address something that might be puzzling you. You might be thinking, but Alan, you're giving lectures, you're writing books, you're talking about all of this. Aren't you violating your own principle about keeping the truth hidden? And that's a fair question. But you see, I'm not trying to give you the truth. I'm trying to give you permission to discover it yourself. I'm trying to show you that it's okay to question everything you've been taught, that it's okay to look directly at your own experience rather than accepting second-hand reports about reality, that it's okay to be what you are rather than trying to become what you think you should be. I'm speaking in circles and paradoxes deliberately. I'm contradicting myself intentionally. I'm setting up ideas and then knocking them down. Why? Because I want to frustrate your conceptual mind. I want to show you that the truth can't be captured in concepts. Every time you think you've grasped what I'm saying, I pull the rug out from under you. And eventually, if you stay with it long enough, you stop trying to grasp and you simply listen. You listen not with your mind, but with your whole being. And in that listening, something else can happen. This is the art of teaching without teaching, the pointing without pointing, the saying without saying. It's been used by Zen masters for centuries. They give you a koan, an unsolvable puzzle, not because they want you to solve it, but because they want you to exhaust your rational mind trying. And when the rational mind finally gives up, when it admits defeat, there's a gap. And in that gap, reality can shine through. But even this explanation is too much. Even telling you that I'm using this technique defeats the purpose of it. So forget everything I just said. Or better yet, Don't forget it and don't remember it. Just let it be what it is, whatever that is. You know, there's a Zen story about a monk who came to a master and said, "I've heard that you know the secret of enlightenment. Please teach it to me." And the master said, "Have some tea." He poured tea into the monk's cup, and he kept pouring even after the cup was full, until the tea was spilling all over the floor. And the monk said, "Master, the cup is full. No more will go in." And the master said, "Yes. And like this cup, you are full of your own opinions and speculations. How can I teach you anything unless you first empty your cup?" But here's the twist that most people miss when they hear this story. The emptying of the cup is not the end goal, because an empty cup is just as useless as a full cup. An empty mind is just as trapped as a full mind. What you want is not emptiness or fullness, but the freedom to be empty when emptiness is appropriate, and full when fullness is appropriate. You want to be able to hold concepts lightly, to use them as tools rather than being used by them. This is what it means to be awakened. You are free. Not free from life, but free within life. Not free from thinking, but free from believing your thoughts. Not free from emotions, but free from being controlled by them. You can still play all the games, but you're no longer fooled by them. You can still wear all the masks, but you know there's no face underneath. You can still tell the story of your life, but you know it's just a story, and you're equally the storyteller, the story, and the blank page it's written on. And the greatest joke of all is this. Once you realize there's nowhere to go and nothing to achieve, you're finally free to go anywhere and achieve anything. Once you realize you're already complete, you're free to become whatever you want. Once you realize nothing really matters, everything becomes infinitely precious. The liberation from the game gives you the freedom to really play it for the first time. But again, if I tell you this, you'll just add it to your collection of spiritual concepts. You'll say, yes, I understand nothing matters, so everything matters. I get it. But you don't get it. How could you? Understanding is of the mind. And what we're talking about is beyond mind, not opposed to mind, but beyond it, including it, but not limited to it. So what am I really doing here today? I'm inviting you to look not at my words, but at what my words are pointing toward. I'm inviting you to examine your own direct experience rather than your beliefs about experience. I'm inviting you to question the questioner, to observe the observer, to witness the witness. And if you do this sincerely, if you really look, you might discover something remarkable. You might discover that there's no one there doing the looking. There's just looking happening. There's no experiencer separate from experience. There's just experiencing occurring. And in that moment of recognition, everything shifts. Not because anything changed, but because you stopped pretending that things were other than they are. This is the truth that must be kept hidden. Not hidden away in some secret vault, but hidden in plain sight. Hidden in the most obvious place imaginable, which is precisely why no one looks there. Hidden in this very moment, in this very experience, in this very breath. Hidden as you, not hidden from you. And the reason it must be kept hidden is that the very seeking of it is what prevents its discovery. The great search is the great obstacle. The pursuit of enlightenment is what keeps enlightenment at bay. The desire for awakening is the dream from which you need to awaken. So, if you really want to find this truth, stop looking for it. Not because you've given up, but because you've realized there's nowhere else to look. You are already standing at the center of everything. You are already it. You were never not it. You can't become what you already are. You can only stop pretending to be something you're not. And when you stop pretending, when you drop the mask, when you let yourself be what you've always been underneath all the layers of conditioning and belief, then you'll understand why this truth must be kept hidden, because it's not really hidden at all. It's just that everyone is looking everywhere except where they are. They're searching the whole world for what they already possess. They're trying to become what they've never stopped being. So the awakened person simply stops pretending. They stop pretending to be separate. They stop pretending to be limited. They stop pretending to know. They stop pretending to not know. They simply are what they are, which is what everything is, which is this eternal presence that's looking out of every eye, that's aware of every thought, that's living every life. And in that simplicity, in that ordinariness, in that utter normalness, lies the greatest mystery and the deepest truth. Not hidden, yet invisible. Not secret, yet unknown. Not distant, yet unreachable by any movement. Here, now, always, as you, as everything, as nothing, as the question and the answer and the space between them. This is what cannot be taught but must be discovered. This is what cannot be given but must be recognized. This is what cannot be spoken but must be lived. And so the awakened ones walk among you, keeping their secret in plain sight, waiting for you to remember what you already know, to see what you've never stopped seeing, to be what you've never stopped being. Wake up. But don't try to wake up. You can't wake up because you're not really asleep. You're just pretending to be, so convincingly that you fooled yourself. So stop pretending, or don't. It doesn't really matter either way. Both the dreaming and the waking are part of the same infinite play. And that, my friends, is the truth that must be kept hidden. Hidden from those who seek it as something separate from themselves. Hidden from those who would turn it into another belief, another system, another path. But revealed, always revealed,